to crack this thing open, you're asking us to do the right thing. We're here. We're the ones who stepped to those survivors after and thanked them and asked them if they were safe tonight. We are going to do, behind you are folks who we probably have close to 80 years of working with victims of sex trafficking, of ensuring that
we've been hearing directly from the victims who have suffered incredible, horrific abuse by Jeffrey Epstein, by Ghislaine Maxwell, and many others who have been involved in these horrific crimes. I will say, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us, that the courage that these women showed today has motivated us so much more to seek justice, accountability, and transparency. And we do not care how powerful, how connected, or what political party those that have victimized and caused horrific pain and sexual abuse to these women are. We will seek justice. I want to just start. We have a few folks who are going to say some remarks. I want to start with Ayanna Pressley. Our Congresswoman, of course, has been a great leader on this. We'll share from a few folks, and I will wrap it up and answer any questions at that time. I want to add before we start that much of the conversation that we had is also confidential, and it's our job to protect the privacy of the women and what they've said, and there are numerous conversations that will be happening in the days ahead. So, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Garcia. What we heard here today was harrowing, and it is proof of what has been an institutional, systemic betrayal for decades. These women now who were preyed upon, groomed, exploited, violated from as young as 13 years old, their bodies violated, their minds manipulated, and their dreams denied. Aspiring artists, lawyers, actors, people who had big dreams. And those dreams have been dashed and denied because of the shame they carry, because of the trauma they carry. It is a lifetime sentence. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but his hurt and his harm is alive and well in the daily experiences of these survivors. Maxwell is incarcerated, but it is these survivors, these victims, who are still very much in jail. And they are deserving of transparency, of accountability, and of healing. We are where we are today because of the leadership of Ranking Member Garcia and our Ranking Member on the Subcommittee for Law Enforcement, Summer Lee, enforcing that vote for a subpoena, because in order for us to hold powerful abusers to account who participated actively in a predator, pedophile, Ponzi scheme meant to feed on the daily perversions of a rich and powerful man and his enablers and those who were his co-conspirators, we want to center the victims and the survivors, not shield the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected. So we forced a vote for a subpoena in a hearing that was on child trafficking to point out the hypocrisy. Then I led calls for a hearing in the Committee on Oversight centering the victims. And my colleagues joined with me in that. We do believe that that did lead to pressure that resulted in today's roundtable, where many of the victims said it was the first time that they had felt heard. On the heels of the many years of abuse that they experienced, to be re-victimized and traumatized by a government. They had abusers that told them they were trash. And because they've never gotten justice and been heard, it has contributed to the ways in which they have felt demoralized and invisible. The role of this committee is to be an efficient and effective pursuit of the truth, and we will be until these survivors get the justice that they deserve. Again, we will not shield powerful abusers. They must be taken into account, and that cannot happen if we are not centering and prioritizing the voices of survivors. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague and dear friend, Congresswoman Simon from California, who has worked for many years with survivors of trafficking.
Good afternoon, everyone. Latifah Simon from California's 12th District. Today we had the honor of listening to extremely brave women who talked about the ongoing rape and sexual exploitation that they endured by the rich and the powerful. And for 3 decades, their voices have been ignored. These are young women who have been on record telling their stories, and yet justice has been denied. Justice has been denied to the young woman who talked about being groomed to go over Jeffrey Epstein's home where she was raped. Children leaving high school to be raped and left to go home alone to then go to school the next day. One of the things that I will tell you, the brave and courageous women today, what they did with both Republicans and Democrats, they sat before us at a round table and gave us their souls, believing that maybe this time they would get justice. Maybe this time they would be seen as children, not adultified by men who ravish their bodies. Maybe then they thought today, if they testified in front of this hearing, that we as members of Congress would not only lift up their stories and seek justice, that we would hear the truth and the life of girls and young people all over this country who are continuously bought and sold, who never seek justice. Because they too, like these women, fear retribution. If we are worth our names on our letterhead, we will not only seek justice and get answers, we will work to protect these women. We will work to ensure that every individual, every adult that had anything to do with their trafficking, their rape, that they are held to account. For over 30 years, I have worked with young women who have been moved through the trafficking channels of this country, and we rarely see them getting justice. Today, hopefully, will be a new day. Oversight Dems, we are working extremely hard with our colleagues, and we are so proud of our leadership. Now we have to move on, get answers, provide protection and support for these women so that more folks come forward, and that the United States is looked upon, hopefully, as a country that protects children, that protects young women, that ensures that if you hurt one of our children, you will absolutely be held to the maximum levels of accountability. Thank you all. And I would like to actually introduce my colleague, Summer Lee, who you heard before is the ranking member of the subcommittee, the Oversight Dems, representing, of course, Oversight Dems in the subcommittee for law enforcement. Ms. Lee.
Thank you all so much. About a month ago, we were through the Oversight Committee subcommittee on federal law enforcement. Me and alongside our colleagues on that committee were able to force a vote to pass a motion to subpoena the Department of Justice to release all of the files associated with the Epstein case, of course, unredacted and complete. We know that since then we've seen a small trickle in of papers and files that, of course, revealed very little new, but was again another attempt to obstruct justice, to distract from what we are here to do, and to keep, of course, prolong this out. But what we saw today in listening to these incredibly brave women who were once young girls, who were victimized repeatedly and have been repeatedly victimized since then because of profound levels of just injustice, profound levels of failure, systemic failure at every single level. They are here to remind us that the reason why we passed this motion, the reason why we had, even if it was just a little bipartisan support at the time, was because our reason for being here is to make sure that whether it is the government of the United States or princes or elected officials from other countries or wealthy billionaires, that no one should be above the law. That if we are going to be a country of laws, that they must be equal, applied to every single person, but that also we have a responsibility to restore these victims. It was the government itself that failed these women. It's the government itself right now that is keeping them from the justice, from the healing, and from the peace that they need and that they deserve. We are here not to add on to the sensationalism of a case that has received global news and global attention, but to recenter that at the heart of this are human beings. At the heart of this are women, girls, now generations of girls beneath them. Though we were able to hear from a number of women today, we know that there were hundreds of women who were involved in this case. Hundreds of women, many of whom are unnamed, but hundreds of women who were victimized, who were sexually abused and then re-victimized by the obstruction from the government. And behind them are millions of girls who have watched how our country, how society handles cases of sexual abuse. They have watched the rich and the powerful get off. They have watched, even in death, them be protected. And we are here as oversight Democrats to say that the time to step up, the time to push, to fight, to ensure justice is now, and today is why we are here to renew our calls, not just for an official hearing, as Representative Ayanna Pressley has called for, an official hearing on the books within our committee. Though we are thankful for the roundtable that we had today, we affirm our calls for that. We also reaffirm our calls for the Department of Justice to hand over immediately all of the files within its custody, not just to ourselves, but also a reminder that, as we learned today, some of the victims themselves have not been able to access their own files. So we want to remind the press, we want to remind our country and the population that these women are still seeking justice for themselves, that they're still seeking healing for themselves, and to the extent that we are able to continue to keep our eyes on what the ultimate prize is, that we will do that, that we will continue to pursue justice in a way that does no more harm to these women and does no more harm to any of the victims, not just of Epstein, but of sexual assault across our country. Thank you.
That we will not let the government of the United States of America, what is supposed to be a free country, a country that believes in law and order and justice and accountability, protect the most powerful people, not only in our country, but who knows, from across the world. So today served, I think, as a reaffirming of our commitment, our profound commitment to making sure that we get justice and we get accountability. There were many themes that we heard today from the brave women who spoke to us. First and foremost, it is an absolute atrocity that the Trump administration allowed and sent over the president's former defense attorney to speak with a monster and to then publicize that interview and provide this monster with a platform to perpetuate her lies. The Trump administration needs to be held accountable for that. We need to demand that Ghislaine Maxwell never get a pardon from the United States government and actually serve out the time that she was given and that she deserves for the crimes that she committed. House Oversight Democrats, and I'm so grateful to our leadership. We are incredibly lucky to have the leadership of Representative Garcia and, of course, Congresswoman Lee, who initiated the subpoena. But this is just the beginning. I think today made very clear that even those of us here who've been working on this and fighting for this, there is so much to this story that nobody knows. There are decades worth of stories and information and a cover-up of this capacity to have allowed for the abuse of over 1,000 women over the course of decades, and then stories that demonstrate that Epstein and others were able to perpetuate the abuse beyond, even after the public knew. We know there's a lot more to this. And I think that this is the most corrupt administration in American history, and this story shows it more than anything. So we will keep fighting. in honor of the survivors who are brave enough to put themselves out there for truth and justice, and we will not back down until there is full accountability and prevention from this ever happening again.
Thank you all. It was a sobering few hours just now, and I want to thank the survivors who came forward, sharing their stories at great cost, great personal sacrifice. We talked to some women who had been followed in recent weeks, who received threats, and this compounds on decades worth of threats. But their story deserves being told. And one of the things that kept coming up was that there was the initial victimization, the assaults, the grooming, the abuse, but there was also a sense of re-victimization every time this story came up again, every time it became clear that justice would be deferred again. And I just want to remind you all that we're here because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, the Attorney General and Director of the FBI, said that there were no Epstein files just a few weeks back. And that has led to all this controversy. It's what led to this moment today. And I just want to repeat something. What we learned in there makes it very clear that not only are there Epstein files, that there are a vast quantity of very pertinent and salient Epstein files that show a roadmap to who is responsible, what was going on here. There are bank records. There are thousands of hours of witness interviews, some of which the witnesses themselves have never had access to. We deserve answers at this point. And just building on what was said earlier, I want to conclude with this because one of the survivors in there said something that really stuck with me. Right now, young women and girls throughout this country are watching very closely to see if the United States government is going to step up and protect them, if we're going to protect them from sexual assault and abuse and human trafficking. And this is our moment to affirmatively answer the question, no. Hell no, that in the United States we're going to step up with this oversight committee, with the leadership of Ranking Member Garcia. We're going to step up and demand those answers. We're going to demand accountability. So thank you all. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague from St. Louis, Leslie Bell.
And I'll make this brief. I had a couple quick takeaways. One, as a prosecutor, I've sat in meetings with victims on cases like these, and you never get used to it. Looking these folks in the eye, the courage that it takes for them to speak their truth and to talk about how they were harmed, it resolves us and makes us laser focused on the fact that we have to get to the bottom of this. We have to get to the bottom of this. What we've seen, these crimes, this cover-up, the scale of it, and I've been involved in prosecutions of a lot of folks, but the scale of these crimes that we're seeing to the highest levels of governments and is of biblical proportions. And so, and I'll say this to the media as I close, anyone who tells you that downplays this, that says that there's nothing to see here, there's nothing to look at them. Because this, we have to get to the bottom of it, and what we saw in there, these survivors, is courage. We stand with them, and we're going to work with them and find justice though the heavens fall. Garcia, thank you.
Just to close, two things. One is Donald Trump has the power right now to release all of the Epstein files and documents. Right now. The DOJ is refusing to release the documents that have been subpoenaed. So there is a White House cover-up at the very highest level in getting the American public the information to bring justice to these victims. And I think it's very important for everyone to understand that. The second thing that's important is in the days ahead, we already know we're going to hear from some of the victims tomorrow. We're going to be hearing from other victims in other ways in the days and weeks ahead. It is very important that we believe these women, that we believe these survivors, we honor that, and that we work to bring them justice. And that is going to be very important in the days ahead. If there's time for one or two questions, and then we've got the Rules Committee.
I just wanted to add
yes,
that
please.
Today's roundtable, again, it was necessary, it was long overdue, and it was very powerful. And it is why I continue to call for a congressional hearing, because their stories need to be a part of a congressional record, and the entire public needs to understand just how systemic and how how far and wide and how deep this institutional betrayal goes. So that congressional hearing still needs to happen, and this discharge petition still needs to go to the floor. So this roundtable, oversight Dems, the subpoena, forcing the vote for the subpoena to the DOJ, important step. Today's roundtable, important step. A congressional hearing centering the voices of Epstein survivors is essential. We cannot hold powerful abusers to account without centering those survivors and doing it on the congressional record to give that transparency to the public as well. And then finally, this discharge petition does need to come to a floor so we can get all of the files. One of the things that was said over and over again today is that the investigation is not complete. That's right. The investigation is not even done.
That's right.
So we need all of this.
That's right. Is there a question or two?
Yeah, how confident are you that the discharge petition will get enough people signing on to make it to the floor? And if it doesn't, what can you do?
Well, there's been enough Republicans that have said that they're going to sign it. It's on the ball's in their court. If Republicans really are going to be focused on transparency and openness, they're going to need to sign that petition. And it's an important part. So we're calling on Speaker Johnson, who was here hearing these victims, to encourage his members to sign that petition.
Speaker Johnson said earlier that he thinks that this discharge petition is moot because of the work that the Oversight Committee is doing. Obviously, the subpoenas went out in large part because of your efforts. I'm curious what your response is to that, given that the DOJ has told Chairman Comer that they're going to...
Speaker Johnson tried to end the last session. In fact, he ended it early to avoid any more discussion about the Epstein files. It's thanks to the work of our subcommittee, Congresswoman Lee and her leadership, that actually forced that release. And now, every step of the way, as far as what Republicans have disclosed, we have forced them or pushed them to do. We've been asking for Alex Acosta to be subpoenaed. They refused. It wasn't until we began talking to other Republicans, Congresswoman Luna and others, that said they would vote with us to get that information. Now Alex Acosta is being subpoenaed. We demanded, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has been demanding to hear from the victims from day one, the survivors. They haven't taken any action until enough pressure has been put, and you see what's happening today. So we continue to bring the pressure. We're not going to stop until we get justice for all of the survivors and the victims in this case. And every step of the way, we're going to force every single vote. We're going to bring it up every single subcommittee until we get justice for every single victim.
The Speaker also says that petition doesn't protect victims. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm going to go let other folks. I'm going to head to Rules Committee, so if you just want to take over.
I just want to add one more note, that it's noteworthy that in the room with 6 victims of sexual violence by Jeffrey Epstein, it was suggested by Democrats that this be investigated using the full force of every committee here in Congress. And the Speaker ended by saying he didn't think that was necessary. He'd like to just keep it in the Oversight Committee. I would like to point out to you all, this is the same Oversight Committee that tried to impeach Biden, the same Oversight Committee that's been shielding Donald Trump, and it's the same Oversight Committee that we know is working collaboratively with leadership in the White House to shield them from accountability. So I think you can draw your own conclusions about those comments, but that is where the Speaker actually chose to end this conversation.
Was that in conversation with you all or a conversation with
It was in the room with the victims, even with the victims in the room.
No, I was just going to add about that alleged mootness. After hearing their stories and talking about the fact that they have been trying to go to all levels of government since the 90s, what we should do is make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that we finally get some semblance of justice for them. So if that means that there's an extra vote that doesn't really take us very much time, even if he believes that it's moot, it's worth it so that those victims feel like we are actually serious. We need to pull every single lever that we have. And right now, I could hear and see within them, they kept saying, we're believing and we're trusting you. Right? They were saying the words, but I can tell you that their body language was not giving off trust. Their body language, in fact, one of them said something to the effect of, either you all are all very serious and honest about this, or you're very good actors. We're going to find out who's real, and we're going to find out who the real actors are. And so that is why anyone who believes that this matters, they should sign the discharge, and they being the Republicans, should go to their leadership and demand a vote be had on the floor.
Well, the argument, to follow up on the question that you asked, was that one of the arguments that's being made both by the Speaker and by Republicans before you all left for recess was that there's not enough language in the discharge petition that would protect the victims, that would handle some of the redactions that I know you all are doing in oversight. So
Can I just say to your question, you're asking us, you're asking the oversight Dems, where our leadership pushed a vote to crack this thing open, you're asking us to do the right thing. We're here. We're the ones who stepped to those survivors after and thanked them and asked them if they were safe tonight. We are going to do, behind you are folks who we probably have close to 80 years of working with victims of sex trafficking, of ensuring that girls and young women have a space in the justice system to tell their stories. The oversight Dems, we're here. We're here. When you don't have the House and you don't have the Senate, we're pushing and using every tool that we have. And why this is important, it is about Epstein, it's about these survivors, but moreover, it is about an administration that refuses to tell the truth, that refuses to protect young girls. It is about an administration that wants you to look away. Well, we heard girls today who are in their 30s who talked about being raped when they were 14. We heard a young girl talk about being told that she would be able to pay for her mother's cancer treatment if she just cooperated. And we're talking about folks in this building and at the highest levels of government potentially being implicated. You ask the Republicans the same question. You ask them what they're going to do to step up and protect young women all over this country who were trafficked from state to state, to be raped and their bodies literally ravaged. That's a quote. Young women in there who are talking about they need to step forward because they too have little girls. They too want to make sure that their girls can look up to them. They want nothing but to be heard. They want nothing but to literally be listened to, because the epic proportion of folks in this administration turning their heads, sending folks home early, sweeping it under the rug. It is the oversight Dems who are saying, do what you will, but tell the truth on behalf of the souls of these young women and the millions in this country. If these women who have the international attention right now are begging for justice, can you imagine the little girl downtown in any American city by herself being trafficked? That's why this is important. If you have people at the highest levels of government potentially implicated in the rape and the trafficking of these young women, we would do the right thing. You ask the Republicans what they're going to do, because we're here. We good. We're saying we got you. We want to protect you, whether it's your county courthouse or literally in the Oversight Committee in the Supreme, wherever it takes. You deserve justice, and that's every girl.
And I would ask my Republican colleagues to prove that they will break their legacy of treating trauma with more trauma and shielding predators, from Jim Jordan to Matt Gaetz to Donald Trump and now to Jeffrey Epstein. They've got a hell of a track record. They might want to try to break that up. In the words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. Are we going to step up and be good men and women so that evil does not triumph? And I'm going to close on the final thing, which is the most important. For people that would wonder, how high are the stakes here? This is a matter of life and death. Because Virginia Giuffre took her life after decades of failure, and there are victims that can no longer come forward because they're in a fetal position, so broken by the weight of what they've been carrying, shame that they've been carrying when it is not their shame to carry. So Virginia Giuffre took her life because of the institutional, consecutive failures and betrayals of our government. So this is a matter of life and death.
I just to get to this thing about this excuse, because that's what it is. All it is that the speaker is giving an excuse, saying that this is about protecting the victims, and that's the reason. I'm sorry, but we have tools. Now, granted, I'm not sitting in rules right now, but we have things known as amendments. You can fix anything that is broken. So if you feel as if the problem is that the legislation isn't perfect, and Lord knows we are good about pushing out imperfect legislation in this body, we do have tools that can fix it. This is nothing more than an excuse for him not to push forward and try to say that it's on behalf of the victims. But if the speaker knows his job, then he knows how to fix legislation that has problems.
Thank you.
Democratic members of the House Oversight Committee held a press briefing after meeting with victims of Jeffrey Epstein, where they discussed the ongoing fight for justice and accountability. Ranking Member Robert Garcia opened the briefing by highlighting the courage of the women who shared their harrowing stories of abuse. He emphasized that the committee was unwavering in its commitment to seek justice for these victims, regardless of the power or influence of the individuals involved. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley added that the testimony from these women served as a stark reminder of the deep systemic betrayal they had endured for decades. She spoke about the grooming, exploitation, and violation of young women, some as young as 13 years old, whose dreams were shattered by the abuse they suffered. She pointed out that while Epstein is dead and Maxwell is incarcerated, the survivors continue to carry the weight of their trauma and have yet to receive the justice they deserve. Pressley stressed that the focus must remain on the survivors, not the powerful figures who enabled this abuse. Congresswoman Latifah Simon reflected on the long history of these women's voices being ignored, despite their repeated attempts to seek justice. She spoke about the challenges these survivors faced, including constant re-victimization by a system that failed them. She called for continued action, saying it was time to hold all the individuals responsible, from Epstein and Maxwell to the wealthy and powerful people who were part of this network. The members of the committee reinforced their dedication to obtaining transparency, including pushing for the release of subpoenaed files that could shed light on the full extent of the abuses. They called for the Department of Justice to release all pertinent files, stressing that this investigation must be thorough and transparent. The briefing also saw members reaffirming their commitment to ensuring that the survivors' voices are prioritized and that the powerful individuals involved are held accountable. Despite political divisions, there was broad bipartisan support for the need to seek justice for the victims, and the committee members made it clear that they would continue to push for the truth to come to light. Legislative reforms were also discussed, particularly in relation to protecting future victims and ensuring that similar systemic failures would not occur again. The committee vowed to keep pressing for these changes, ensuring that those responsible for the abuse are not shielded by their wealth or status. In closing, committee members reiterated their commitment to the victims and their fight for justice. They made it clear that they would continue to pursue transparency and accountability at every level, regardless of the opposition they may face. The press briefing was a clear reminder that the fight for justice in the Epstein case is far from over, and the survivors will not be forgotten.